Welcome back to the Women in Movement podcast. We're here with Deb Parsons, who is a movement therapist in New York City. Deb, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I do something I would just refer to as functional puzzle solving. People come in, they've got specific issues going on, hip problems, neck, shoulder, feet. I look at them, I do an assessment based on what I see, and we kind of put all of the pieces together, draw a new through line, help people figure out how to move better, move with more comfort, and move with more ease.
Nice. I love that. Yeah.
That's the quickest explanation I can give you.
Yeah. For reference, we're sitting in Deb's office right now with so many toys and so many options and layouts for environment to help people move better, figure out those pieces and puzzles. And she works in the city, so if you ever want to come visit her, you can visit her here. Her information will be linked in the bio. But let's get started and chat. So what is young Deb like? What is your
What's my origin story?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I started dancing at the age of 8, but I'd always been really kinetic. Always loved to move and run around and jump and play as a kid. I was a jungle gym kid. And then at 8, I got introduced to dance in a gym class, and I loved it, and I loved the teacher. And so I started studying dance, and then I studied dance all the way until about the age of 28. In between that, I went to college and I got a BFA in acting. And then after college, I moved to New York. My whole goal was to get a job with a dance company. I got chewed up and spit out. And then I went back to Philadelphia where I grew up, and I actually danced with a dance company in Philly that doesn't exist any longer. And then after that, I moved out to San Francisco. I did some more dancing out there. And I was at that point where I was trying to decide, am I going to be a waitress that dances and gets paid, or what am I doing here? So I started taking Pilates classes and thought, well, I can become a Pilates instructor. So I got Pilates certified in 1994. And at that point, I met my first mentor, which was a man named Jean-Claude West. And to this day, my husband and I still study with him. And we studied with him extensively until we left the city in 2000. I left San Francisco and moved here in 2000. And then by happenstance, because of COVID and everybody going remote, he kind of came back into our lives, and we still do remote sessions with him every other week.
That's amazing.
So it's been amazing. So when we moved back here to New York, and we set up shop here in Manhattan, I met my second real mentor, is a woman named Karen Carlson, who's a Pilates instructor down in Philadelphia. Went through her whole certification program, and then, it's just been kind of going like that ever since. But the majority of my work, I would have to say, all the assessment work that we do in here is all based in stuff we've learned from Jean-Claude. So it's biomechanics, it's assessment, it's motor learning, and it just doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I remember I was referred to you by Rochelle, who is also on the podcast, and she was like, she's amazing. She's going to work through these little micro movements. And I remember coming in here with a strained pec, badly strained, and I had been to acupuncture. I'd seen an osteopath who's also been on the podcast, and I needed the movements to also add to what I was doing, because clearly the alignment was not fully fixed. It needed something else, like another piece to the puzzle. And we did one little mini exercise, and the burning in my chest stopped. And I was like,
do you remember what it was?
It was the yoga block on the side and pressing the shoulder up and back. So as you had stated, my humeral head was further jutting out in my shoulder socket, and you were trying to resituate it on the rib cage. And I just think that to me was such a powerful experience, knowing that I have done so many different movements within this body that I have, and that little micro movement where I was like, my humeral head is supposed to be here, and now I can feel my tricep that has been kind of not online for a while. Yeah, the bicep was working for most of my life. But So Deb works through a lot of these micro movements and specific cueing that is just, it's very intentional, very focus driven. When you're doing the exercises, like for me, when I'm doing the exercises, I have to be in quiet space.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that's really important for me is clarity of intent. Mm-hmm. So, and this is, a lot of this stuff, it's like, this is all referenced back to, again, my mentors, but clarity of intent is specifically when you're giving somebody an activity to do. So, as a practitioner, I just feel like it's absolutely important that you know what you are trying to achieve with the body in front of you, which first of all makes it easier to communicate. If you know what you're looking for and looking to do, you'll be able to communicate it to the person, and then obviously they can synthesize it and help correct themselves and learn a new way of moving. So yeah, that's sometimes with that clarity of intent, you don't need a huge amount of work or things to do.
Yeah. I think also it's cool to just, in a world where we're paying attention to all these big things and these big movements and everything can look extravagant, to just take it back to those small little tweaks that you can do that really can create huge change within the body.
Well, I always go back to this because I love this. Again, Karen Carlson once said, this is about learning by subtraction. So I always think about that, and I love that, where you look at a movement, or we'll have somebody come in, it doesn't matter what modality, like they're either a power lifter or they do pole or whatever, and you know the movement they're having difficulty with, so you look at that movement and you distill it down to all of its component parts. And then you have to filter out what the most important piece of that is. And then once you teach that, then you start to layer all of the other pieces on top of it. So I found it really effective, but I just love that idea of kind of breaking something down and starting it from the ground and then working up to the most complex form. Anyway.
Yeah, I like that. I like that phrase of learning from subtraction.
Learning by subtraction.
By subtraction, yeah, because we are in such a society that is consumer driven. So there's a lot of this need to add things. I need this tool or this massage gun or this. Or
even they want to go to the nth degree of a movement. Like they want to go to the most complex movement and just do that without really understanding. Like first you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And then it's going to make achieving that more complex movement that much easier.
Yeah.
And safer.
Yeah, I can definitely say that knowing my position with my shoulders has really changed my pole game, as well as basketball and other things.
Well, just to reference, you had me in to learn some of the pole stuff, and that stuff was so challenging. Yeah. That was hard.
It's hard. But you also tried out the hammock, which we can get into as well. But the pole, adding the hammock to the pole, I have been able to work on what you have given me as far as positioning of the shoulder joint and taking that into the moves that are more difficult with the support of the hammock. So feeling what I need to feel while I'm upside down in these dangerous positions with the safety, but then also the ability to focus on the little micro movements and engagement that needs to happen.
So you're learning by subtraction?
Yeah, exactly. Learning by subtraction. But yeah, if you want to share too about your pole experience briefly, your pole and our hammock.
I think, what did we do, an hour?
We did an hour, yeah.
And man, that was enough for me. It was, more than anything, I think it was the inversion. I got to the point with the inversion where I was like, okay, I need to get the blood out of my head, right? Yeah. But I found, ever since you told me that you teach at Incredible, so I started following Incredible on Instagram, and I'm looking at all these videos. I'm like, oh my God, they make it look so easy by comparison. So when we did that, I was like, man, this stuff is super challenging. Yeah. Just in terms of, the strength for one thing, but the intricacies of the positioning of where you're squeezing with your knees or where your arms are located, where your hands are placed. I have a whole new appreciation for that.
Yeah, I think we should also get you on a Lyra at some point, because I feel like Lyra you might feel more comfortable too, because it's a circular apparatus, like the hoop. Yeah. But there's just more contact points. Your shoulders can be more of in their natural position. a little bit easier, and like you can kind of square some things off a little bit better. Whereas the pole is hard because a lot of this stuff is pulling like to this middle apparatus.
Right. And a middle apparatus that like really isn't your middle, right? So if you think about it like your personal axis versus the axis of the pole, it's not, it's not like the pole's going right through the center of your body. I know there's so much to unpack with that.
Yeah. Well, how was your experience with the hammock, the inversion with the hammock?
That was so much easier, and it was definitely way more comfortable. I mean, I know you took some photos, and of course I was like, as is my nature, I'm looking at the photos afterwards. I'm like, oh, well, what if we position, maybe I should have, what if I had had the hammock more around my hip joints rather than my low back? How would that have changed things? And so, I'd be kind of curious to play with that more in terms of making that, could that be more efficient? Could that be more beneficial? I don't know. It's sort of one of those things where I was like, well, this is so foreign.
And like, it's foreign to one, be upside down, and then two, to be like held by something where you have to keep that tension on that item. So if the hammock creeps too far down, then you're in danger of it just slipping off because you're held by your butt in those inversions too. So it's definitely, but it's also a different release when you're just upside down, just there. It's a different release than most.
And I gotta say, I love being in that beginner position. That's, I mean, I have no problem with that. Like, I love being like total beginner attitude. I'm no idea what I'm doing here. I'm totally clueless. This is kind of cool. It's just like, so that's always fun for me.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it's also always cool to add things to your toolbox so that you have the ability to understand like a little bit more of what other people are going through when they come into your classes and whatnot. And I find that the more I can cross-reference things and make those connections, the more that like solidifies and stays with the person or myself. Like, for example, you gave me an exercise that was a way to like kind of stretch out the lat. And that movement was very similar to me as a right-handed reverse layup in basketball. So once I was able to make that connection to basketball, I was like, oh, this is what I'm searching for. I could do that exercise without all the other pieces on the table. I could try to find it while standing or,
just that that one motion.
Yeah.
And then you could add the other stuff in later.
Yeah, exactly.
Learning by subtraction.
Yes. Yeah, so you wanted to discuss a little bit about mentorship when you mentioned, what really drew you to your mentors? And
well, let me take that back. I mean, I think a lot about this too, because especially when you asked me to do this, I consider myself extremely lucky that I've had teachers along the way that were really, really supportive or really wonderful. And I've had both. I mean, just this is all completely anecdotal, but I remember when I was 6 years old, I started doing gymnastics. And I mean, I was terrified because the gymnastics coach was one of those awful, awful old school coaches that was like, if you can't hold a handstand for 3 minutes, I'm going to throw you out the window. And you're 6 years old, you believe it.
Yeah, right.
And so, I mean, I just was terrified to the point where my mom finally said, okay, you don't have to do this anymore. And then when I was 8 and this woman came and taught this dance class, and she was so lovely and so generous and so kind, and I just gravitated to that and so nurturing. And so I got very, very lucky with that. And then in college, I also had some dance teachers that were very similar. Like, they really took me under their wing, and they really nurtured me along. That's something I think about a lot in terms of having a mentor. And then when we met Jean-Claude, again, it was one of those things where he opened up a whole new way of looking at things and a whole new door. And so, my husband and I, Alec, took a workshop with him not long after we had gotten our Pilates certification. And we left there, and both of us were like mind blown, so far over our head with any kind of knowledge or information. We were like, this is a whole new language. There's relevance there. I don't even know what it is yet, but I know this is something that's really important. So that it changed trajectory for us in a way. So, rather than just teaching Pilates, it was like, okay, now there's a whole other way of looking at this stuff. There's a whole other way to take all these Pilates movements apart. And it's helped kind of, I guess, provide a framework for me in terms of direction of taking work. It's not like, it's like kind of finding people that you follow that are really nice with their time, and they have so much great information to give, and you study with them and you learn as much as you can, and then you adapt it to the other stuff that you're doing. And then, so I always say this way, like between Jean-Claude and Karen, I've learned so much different aspects from both of them. So from him, it's been all assessment. And from Karen, she's taken all of the Pilates repertoire and broken every single exercise of like 500 some exercises down into their primary, secondary, tertiary, fourth and fifth intentions. In other words, like, what are the 5 things that need to happen before you do the 100? So for her, it was a way to teach and to convey this information, but to really solidly understand it. And I just wanted to mention that in this because I think it's really, really useful. And it's this whole idea also of, it's almost like oral tradition, right? It's like everybody, your genealogy, who your teachers were and who their teachers were. So you have the sense of where you fit in with this chronology and this timeline that I think is really important. And it gives you a context and a framework. And even in dance, I mean, especially if you're studying particular dance styles. So that my dance teacher in college introduced me to Merce Cunningham. And so I started studying at the Cunningham studio when I came here, but I knew what his background was. I knew that he had danced with Martha Graham, and whose teacher was whose teacher was whose teacher, and it's you just feel like you're a part of a bigger picture in that way.
Yeah.
And I think, and you're contributing to that picture as well. So I don't know. I don't see a lot of people that are pursuing that, or not actively pursuing it, but finding it. And I don't know if that's more of a result of things being thrown online more often. But I mean, it's like I'm a different generation. It was, social media didn't exist when I was learning all this stuff. So it was like you found your teachers.
And a lot of your stuff is not online. So
none of it is.
I think when I researched you, I think I found something on Facebook that was a random video from a random workshop. And that's the only thing that is there. I think it's been beautiful to come here and learn from you in person.
Thank you.
After taking 2 sessions with you for my shoulder, I had come here to do the shoulder and rib cage with you. And then I had come back for the pelvis assessment, lower body assessment. And then we did the pelvis first and then the rib cage after your workshops. Yeah, and those were just amazing experiences as well, where I like you, walked away like, oh, my brain is fried. And I feel like I've been staring at hips all day.
The first workshop that we ever took with Jean-Claude, I told people the story. We left that workshop. It was actually a weekend workshop. And the stuff that we do here is, it's 4 hours.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of hit this sweet spot in here where it's like 4 hours. We limit it to like 12 people max just because of the size of the space. I love that format.
Yeah.
I really, really love it because I feel like it's everybody gets involved, which is super cool. But when we did the Jean-Claude workshop the first time, we left and we were so brain dead that we were like, let's just go order a pizza. And we watched Tommy Boy because we needed something like completely mindless.
Yes.
Just decompress the whole thing.
Yes, I definitely understand that. I think the one day after the pelvis workshop, I left and I had to go teach a class. And I was teaching a basketball class. I think I've just been staring at legs the whole time. And I'm like, how do I switch my attention to other parts? It was funny. But yeah, very intricate, amazing stuff. So if you have a chance to come check out their workshops, definitely. We'll include all the information in the bio for those and how to contact Deb and Alec for those dates and But yeah, so can we talk a little bit about cueing?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Because I think that the way that you also pass on and what you get from your teachers is also through cueing. And I think that some of the cues you've used with me, I use with my clients now. So the idea of letting the collarbone spiral outward, I thought that was a beautiful cue for certain positions, or like keep the breastbone lifted. I'm not going to give away all your secrets. Sorry. But yeah.
But I didn't make it up. I got it from somebody else.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you want to talk a little bit about cueing, or are there some cues where you played around with this? This is definitely not working.
No. There are definitely times where we've had people in the studio. I mean, we only do privates. So, one-on-one. And we've definitely had people in the studio where, you're working with them, and you know what you're trying to do. You see what's going on. So somebody will come in and I'll be like, okay, I'm looking at that left shoulder is elevated. I'm looking at the rib cage compression. We need to change that. So you kind of start taking them through some correctives, and all of a sudden you realize you're like, this is not landing. And so you have to figure out what the best way to communicate with the body in front of you is. And this is something that Alec and I talk about a lot too. It's like, this is where you get to know the person in front of you. What do they do for a living? Maybe they're visual people, they're visual learners, maybe they've got an analytic job, so you start talking to them in more analytic terms, or more binary terms, or you give them more more imagery. So it kind of depends on that person. You have to be aware of that and adaptable in the moment. Or sometimes they need to be touch cued, if that, if they're comfortable with that. We always ask, are you okay with touch? And somebody says no, then it's hands off. That means you got to figure out another way to communicate. Sometimes people respond to demonstration. I feel like I'm a learner where if you show me what I'm supposed to do, I can mimic it back. Sometimes that's easier for people, but yeah, you kind of start with this idea in your head and see what the cue is. Like, you're trying to open the collarbones, or am I trying to open the collarbones, or am I trying to get you to find retraction of your shoulder blades? It's sort of like one and the same. So I could be super direct about it and say, draw your shoulder blades together, or I could say, open the collarbones, and that has a similar effect of drawing the shoulder blades together. So again, it depends on what your outcome is, and that's where that clarity of intent comes in.
Right. But I also think just the idea of the collarbone spiraling, like this idea that it does kind of it does have a twist to it, right?
Oh yeah.
Like it's something that we don't usually even say, but it does have that ability to spiral a little bit.
And it has to, because in something like your arm raise, you go from 0 to 90 degrees, that's just in the shoulder joint. But if you're going from 90 degrees to 180, now all of a sudden you've got to account for shoulder blade movement, and you've got to account for collarbone movement, because the collarbones are going to spin upward. So, it's this whole really beautiful series of transitions through the joints that have to occur. And that's where the choreography comes in. It's about finding that exchange through the whole line, from shoulder to shoulder blade to collarbone to rib cage, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think it's cool to have, I understand that people are different learners. I do get that, but I also think that imagery oftentimes is a good cue, because we do, the way that we listen or we read, our brain processes through images when we're reading even.
Right.
So it's like finding, and if you can find the correct image for the person or their day or their lifestyle, I think that's, not everything's 100%, but usually it's a pretty good chance of.
And when you hit it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, just to give you an example, I was working with a client earlier this week, and he tends to have a very posteriorly rotated pelvis. His sits bones are kind of, dragging down toward his heels, and his pubic bone is swinging up toward the ceiling, right? So he's in a tuck. And sometimes it's just a motor learning thing. They're in a position so long that it's so hard for them to find an opposite direction.
Right. Or they've done a lot of kettlebell swings and then they're just tucked.
Right. Or, there's so many modalities out there.
Right.
A lot of, not to slam anything, but a lot of bar exercises will take people into this tuck and these, it's really rough on the hips. But anyway, with him, I'm like, what am I trying to say here? And I finally said to him, I was like, on the wings of an airplane, those flaps? And he's like, flaps up? And I was like, yeah, flaps up. And it was like, bam, he got it.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, okay. So it was like through the whole rest of the session, I'm like, give me some flaps up.
Nice.
Give me some flaps up. Flaps up. Flaps up.
Nice. I love that.
So now you got it. Flaps up.
Flaps up. That's good. That's really good. You had any other cueing stories or?
I mean, I have a bad story about somebody that did not go well with.
That's good. That
I never saw again after this.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that you never saw them again.
No, it was fine. It was one of those things where it was like I actually finally asked her because then I learned this term from a friend of mine, help resistant. And because when I first started out, it was like every time something went wrong, I just automatically assumed it was me.
Right.
Like I'm not communicating the information right.
Right.
I'm doing something wrong. And it would just wreck me. And
I love that term, by the way, help resistant.
Help resistant. And sometimes,
Wow.
you'll see people, they come in and sometimes you get a lot of like, yeah, but I just can't do that. I just can't. There's a lot of very negative talk around it. So that kind of sets you up on automatically, like you're behind the 8 ball with this person, right? Anyway, it got to the point with this person where I finally said, because it was getting very frustrating, and I finally asked her, I said, what would be the best way for me to communicate this information to you? Like I just straight up asked her. I was like, I'm having a hard time. Maybe you could help me understand the best way to communicate to you. And man, storms up off the table. That's your problem, not my problem. And like slammed out the door. It was one of those like, whoa.
That's wow. Help resistant.
And then she contacted me and she said, I'm hoping we can still work together. And I contacted her back. I was like, no, this is not happening.
Yeah.
This is not a good idea.
Yeah. There's some other things maybe you should do first before.
So
it's just like not
tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be challenging, but by and large, it's like, again, you know what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Like we're working here together as a team. So yes, you are coming in as a client, but you also have to be able to do the work for the thing.
And I'm here as a consultant. Like I can't go into your body and do this for you. So I need to try to help you do it.
Yeah.
And learn it.
Yeah, so that you can also do it without me, right?
Well, and that's huge too. I mean, you kind of hit on that. Is that one of the things that's really important when people come in here, for at least for us, for Alec and I in the studio, is that we really want people to understand what they're experiencing. So education's huge. I mean, we've got the skeletons here, we've got charts, we've got books we'll pull out, and so if somebody's having issues with their pelvis or whatever, I'll go over the skeleton with them. I'll be like, see this? These are the bones. These are how they relate to each other. Here's how they move with each other. This is what's not happening in your body. This is what we need to try to make happen. And sometimes if you just explain that, it starts to take the threat away. And all of a sudden they start to relax and they're like, oh. So now they've got some agency in what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful statement. The idea of just showing them what's inside their body, what they can't see that's like happening when they're trying to do whatever movement it is. Yeah, taking that threat away like that, or possibly taking the threat away.
It's also amazing to watch people, you explain this stuff, and like the greatest thing, what's so satisfying is you're kind of explaining what you're, I'm like, this is what I'm seeing. Doesn't mean I'm right all the time, but it's like, this is what I'm seeing. And have somebody go, oh, so that means X, Y, Z or whatever. And you're like, yes, you're like connecting all the dots here.
Yeah. And that's more powerful for the person too, in a way, because they're making that connection without you just saying the thing.
And it's it's so exciting and it's so satisfying to like watch that light bulb go off.
Yeah. Cause that's another example of like it's on the person to make the actual final connection of the thing. You can provide the environment, you can provide the cueing, but like the person making the connection, it's got to be kind of from within in a way. It should stick longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think if a person understands, then they know, it goes back to that clarity of intent. So if they understand what's going on and they're being asked to do a specific movement, they're like, okay, I know what I'm trying to do with this move. So if we give somebody homework, then like, I know what I'm trying to achieve here.
Right.
And that's where we see people, because we'll get people in here sometimes that have done, they've gone through kind of PT, or they just like, I just picked up this exercise off of YouTube, and it's like, but do you understand what that movement is? Like, do you understand what that's trying to achieve, and what you're trying to do with that?
Yeah.
No,
or how you can compensate.
Right. Or how you could, like how it could go wrong.
Right.
I don't know. I just wanted to pull. I thought it would be something to do, and it was like,
Yeah, I think it was helpful for me coming in when you were like, do you notice that there are creases in your shirt here? Or those little feedback tools that I could look at on myself and be like, oh, that's what's happening a little bit. And that gave another visual, assessment for myself on things.
Yeah, and then you just start to think critically about it. It's sort of like, okay, if I see the shirt crinkling on my right side, then maybe I'm a little compressed in my right rib cage. And oh, look at that. If my rib cage is compressed on the right, my left shoulder looks higher.
Right. And that's something this kind of leads into the idea of when you discuss looking at the body sometimes in cylinders, whether it's like one cylinder or two-piece cylinder, and how you put those puzzle pieces together through that like assessment lens. Do you want to go into that at all?
Honestly, that's something more Alec talks about than I do.
Okay.
He uses cylinder imagery more than me.
Okay.
But what I can say on that is that you're looking at the relationship right versus left. So, I mean, even in the workshops, we talk kind of relative relationships. So like with the pelvis stuff, it's sort of like if your pelvis is turning to the right and your legs are fixed, that's a relative internal rotation of your right leg, external rotation of your left leg. So, and if somebody's reporting something in either their right shoulder or their hip or whatever, you have to look at what's happening on the other side as well, because you're not necessarily sure what the driver is of that movement, of that pathology or that dysfunction.
Yeah. I like what you just said there.
What's that?
When you said you don't know what the driver is of that movement or function or dysfunction within the body. And that's really true, especially when someone's walking in that you don't even know. You're trying to find the driver, and it could come from a completely different place. And why that right shoulder is in pain is because they're compressed on a different area of their body.
Because they sprained their left ankle.
Yeah.
X amount of years ago, and they were in a boot, or could have been anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the fun part, and that's the puzzle solving part. You're like, okay, what happened? What is the story in this body in front of me here?
Which I also appreciated is that you made a phone call we spoke on the phone before we even met in person. So you kind of were starting to figure out some of those pieces of how the injury occurred or like what I've been through. So you had a little bit of reference leading up to the appointment.
Yeah. Like she's got a basketball background. She does pole.
Yeah.
Okay. What do I know about those movements, and like what's the potential? What are the potential issues that could come up with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like I said, it's fun.
Yeah.
And then you get to start to see it in the body, which is kind of cool. You're like, or it'd be like somebody come in, you're like, were you an equestrian by any chance, or whatever,
Yeah. And I think that what's cool is that you can find the similar patterns or the similar injuries or the similar aggravated areas in the body when it's relevant to it, like another injury or something. But I think what Alec had said in one of the workshops was always leave yourself open to surprise, because there's still that element of surprise of, yes, you might have seen this pattern in these basketball players, but this person might have something completely different going on.
This particular basketball player may have a different scoliotic pattern, or may have something going on, something in the hip, or, Yeah, so it's like, assume nothing is textbook.
Right.
But by the same token, and this is kind of also just how my brain works, I need to have some kind of a template that I can work from. Yeah. So if I have an outline of how things work, and then I don't see that happening in front of me, that's how I can start to figure out what needs to happen and where I need to go. So it's like, you kind of go off of a template. These are the relationships, right? So if the ribs are shifted to the right, the pelvis is relatively shifted to the left.
Right.
So what's happening with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Having a template is always helpful.
I mean,
Like,
it just
can't
clears
go
my
from-
mind.
Yeah. And just go from complete scratch.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I like there was something that you also had said in one of the workshops where you were talking about you can create any environment that you want. You just need to know what you're asking for. And I thought that that was really beautiful, was this idea of like, yes, you could do this exercise or this exercise and all these exercises that are also online. But again, what are you asking for? I thought that that was just a beautiful way to look at it, really being intent. Right? You said back to the clarity of intent. Yeah. And then one environment might work for a certain person or it might not work for another person. Like you spoke about in the workshop about individuals who are hypermobile.
Right.
How certain environments work better for them and certain environments allow the individual to kind of just compensate for the elasticity in the joints.
So like somebody hypermobile, I'm not going to put them in a position where they have the opportunity to go to these extreme end ranges of motion because I don't really think they would need that. That's not where I would want to take them. So I would probably bias toward putting them in a closed chain position. So their hands and their knees are touching, or their hands and their feet are touching something. And then, try to work from there. So you're trying to create some stability.
Right.
Whereas, I've had people come in that are, they have a hard time, again, kind of finding that flaps up, right? And I can't just take them in this sagittal plane where I'm moving them forward and back. It's really hard to find. So sometimes I'll put them in a side-lying position. And if I can get them to rotate, then we can start to free up the other planes of movement. Yeah. And gravity. I mean, gravity is a huge part of that. So kind of whenever we choose movements that we're giving people, I'm always asking, like, what's gravity's role in this? So do I want to set somebody up where gravity's going to help them into the direction I'm looking for? Or do I want to set them up where they have to resist the pull of gravity? So, I mean, that's great for pull.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, what's gravity doing to the body here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how are you working with that?
Yeah.
Or against it? So, yeah, and again, it's exactly because there are some people that are going to be able to handle one environment that can't handle another. They can't go on their stomach; it's too uncomfortable, or being on their back is uncomfortable. Sometimes, if you take them side-lying, it can start to open that pathway up.
Sideline, yeah. Yeah, we did a couple exercises that were definitely side-lying, which is, I think, kind of newer to exercises that I've done in the past with other.
And rotation. I mean, that's a JC thing. This is a lot of that stuff from him. He's done a lot of rotational work, and the rotation seems to free up other directions. Just because of not getting too much into biomechanics, but just because of how the vertebrae work with each other.
Yeah, if you like twist in one direction and then you forward fold and then you come back up, you can twist a little bit more in that direction for a specific example.
Right, or you trying to, or are the vertebrae compressed on one side? And if that's the case, then they're gaped on the other side.
Right.
And that's going to also involve side bending and rotation. So you have to unwind that.
Yeah.
That Rubik's Cube there.
Yeah, you work through the vertebra a lot, I think, too. Yeah. What I found interesting, too, with your work, both of your works, was that a lot of it had to do with the rib cage and the pelvis, and then T12, right?
Yep.
So
that'll be an upcoming workshop.
Yes. So when I came in with my shoulder issues, we actually worked more through the rib cage and that alignment. And you even looked at my cervical spine and we're seeing how that was placed on the body. So there was some head tilting in there. But yeah, so can you speak a little bit to why you choose to focus on those parts of the body?
Where I would start from?
Yeah, like where you start from, or why you think that either the rib cage or the pelvis have a lot of importance. I know we've also done some work directly with the foot, which was also super helpful, which I think is because the foot contacts the ground too. So it's your first.
Yeah, the foot contacts the ground, and the foot, just to kind of start with the pelvis idea. So, again, somebody comes in and we talk and I get an idea of what they're coming here for, and that'll start to direct me. But when I'm standing there, I'm looking at them and I'm talking to them, I'm getting a whole, you're cracking up. I get a whole vision, like, I'm already getting my information the minute they walk through the door and they start talking to me, because I'm watching how they're standing.
Right.
And how they're holding their body. And so that'll start to what I see, what becomes the most apparent to me will start to direct where I want to go with somebody. So let's say they have something going on the foot. I could start to work at the foot. I mean, depending on the person, or maybe there's something in the pelvis that I'm drawn to, and you've got your hip, your knee, and your ankle, and they're all connected. So if you see something going on at the pelvis, sometimes it's easier to address the pelvis and what's happening at the pelvis, and then that'll start to have effect down the chain at the foot. I've had times where I've worked on the foot, and all of a sudden the pelvis starts to correct. It kind of, I don't know, that becomes just sort of like in the moment, where are you going to go? With the rib cage, and also with the hip stuff, I probably just start at the pelvis anyway, that whole relationship. But with the shoulder and the rib cage is kind of the foundation that the shoulder girdle sits on top of. So oftentimes if you see dysfunction in the shoulder girdle, and by that I'm talking scaps, collarbones, and humerus, and the arm, if you see dysfunction in that, then you have to look at what's happening in the rib cage, because the rib cage position could drive that dysfunction. So kind of like we talked about early, might have been when you came in, it's sort of like, oh, look at the right side of your ribs. It's compressed. You've got these creases in the right side of your t-shirt.
Right.
But, look what's happening to your left shoulder. Look how that's elevating your left shoulder.
Right.
And as soon as that happens, then you start to throw that shoulder girdle function off.
Right.
So if we can fix the ribs first, then that gives the shoulder girdle opportunities to rest on top of the rib cage, and then we can start to put the function back in the shoulder girdle.
Right.
That, we're trying to look at the most direct way in, and the kind of like the most bang for the buck in that case, right?
Yeah.
So we could just go pound on your shoulder and see if we can make that work. But if we don't fix what's happening in the rib cage, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and also might alter what work you did in the shoulder sometimes, possibly.
What's that?
Would it, like, if you were to start shoulder and then do something in the rib cage, would it like alter a little bit in the opposite way?
Yeah, it would. But I mean, I think in that case, yeah, you're gonna look kind of upstream, downstream, right? So what's gonna have the broadest effect? And it's gonna be rib cage.
Yeah.
So you go for, you kind of go for a little more central.
Right.
So you kind of rib cage or pelvis, they're going to have big effect up and down the chain.
Yeah.
So, and that T12 is where the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine meet. Mm-hmm. And without getting too geeky about it, it's a really important segment because it behaves as a thoracic spine from above and a lumbar spine from below. So it's this intersection. And so oftentimes it'll become hypermobile. Oftentimes you're going to see people that becomes a hypermobile segment that they just move from automatically.
When they have limitations on either part of the spine.
Yeah. So if there's a limitation from above or below, then that becomes almost like the go-to segment.
Right.
So like you see people, we see this a lot with people that do a lot of yoga sometimes, or a lot of these extreme kind of like backbending movements, and then that just becomes this like really, really mobile segment. And then once you do that, then you kind of start to stiffen around it.
Interesting.
So you've got this like one really movable segment, and then stiffer movements above and below.
Right.
Or stiffer segments above and below.
Yeah.
So kind of getting control of that opens up above and below the chain. So we'll kind of go there sometimes.
Yeah.
Depending,
And would that control have to do something also with the rib cage flare at the bottom?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's people's most, like, they'll go to the rib cage flare when they bring their hands overhead. Right?
Right. Because that will make that rib cage flare is making up for a lack of extension higher up the chain.
Interesting, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, if you don't have that ability to upwardly rotate your shoulder blades at that end range of the arms going overhead, if you can't upwardly rotate your shoulder blades and your collarbones can't roll up, then you're going to just start to flare the ribs because you're going to try to get your arms overhead any way you can. And sometimes that's like essentially, it's like you're trying to do a back bend to get your arm up. That's an exaggeration.
So like your arm should be able to go up without doing a back bend.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like if you go to the rib cage, then that's going to start to facilitate the movement of the shoulder blade.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Hopefully that doesn't get too geeky for people.
No, I love that part. Get as geeky as you want. I think you also had said this in the workshop as well, but you had mentioned, do I have to solve this in the moment or can we table this when you were looking at the body? So is it a problem that you can kind of table and go back to, or is it like something that you might look at later and be like, oh, it's solved from that, whether you're working through that central space or...
Yeah, I think again, you got to consider who's in front of you and you know, what they're capable of, like whether they're, you know, they don't have the bandwidth for something or they just, what's going to be the most important thing that they can get out of it, right? Are you solving their immediate concern? And, you know, again, it's like I keep going back to these, this is why I love the mentor idea. I keep going back to these little snippets of my teachers and something Karen Carlson said once. So she's like, you got to give them what they want and you have to give them a little bit of what you think they need. So it's a matter of, so sometimes, yeah, I would table something, especially if I think I can get to it from another direction or a direction that's even more important. Like, so if somebody comes in, they're like, yeah, but it's my shoulder. And you're like, well, let's hang on to that for a sec. Let's work on the ribs first. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wow. Oh my gosh, my shoulder even feels better. I mean, I've heard Alec in here with people and somebody said they came in with something specific and it was like I'm just going to make an exaggeration, like their shoulder. And he was like, yeah, but what's going on with that foot? And he'll work on the foot. And then all of a sudden they're like, and my shoulder doesn't hurt. And he'll say, we didn't even touch your shoulder.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
That's
you
know, that's kind of the fun part. So yeah, I think you got to prioritize.
Right.
And go for the biggest effect.
Well, something else I wanted to discuss with you too was the idea of isometric, eccentric, and concentric movements. So just what are your views on those movements? Is there a certain progression pattern you like, or are there some that you find you have more bang for your buck in for?
I think that probably depends on what the task at hand is, you know? Again, let's say you're dealing with a hypermobile population. Sometimes an isometric is enough, right?
Yeah.
Right. An isometric is enough. But if you're dealing with somebody who's really in a chronically shortened position in some direction, sometimes an eccentric is helpful.
Interesting. I like those ideas.
Yeah. I mean, so an example of an eccentric is that sometimes I'll, you know, if there's a tightness in the rotators, like your right hip rotators, I'll work that eccentrically, because sometimes a tightness or a shortness just doesn't have that ability to control that range of motion. So I'll go for more eccentric because I'm trying to get the person to find some length in the tissue, but maintain an ability to control that range. So, you know, I want somebody to be able to control, you know, everybody talks about flexibility.
Yeah.
And stretching. I'm not a real fan of static stretching. I think mobilizing is good. But again, you still got to know what you're trying to do through that mobilizing. So I think flexibility to me is going to be defined as an increasing range of motion without giving up control. So it's not like you're just going from point A to point B where it's like you're either on or just hanging it, you know, you're off. You're hanging in the joints, or you're on and everything's fixated. You need to be able to find that ability to almost be like an accordion. So I go toward an eccentric control, but then there are going to be movements that people do that are concentric. Like I get people that are lifters in here. It's like they need to know how to brace. Right. They're under load. They got, you know, so I think all of that depends on what the task at hand is. So, and again, what that person's trying to achieve. So you get somebody who's a yoga practitioner and having trouble with certain poses, or you get somebody who's an O-lifter. It's like, you don't want to leave them unstable in any case.
Right. I think what's cool when you mentioned the ability of like to control your range of motion throughout, I I think that's like a beautiful way to try to like enjoy your transitional points. But if you're a dancer, if we go back to like your dance background, instead of just like enjoying the like end pose that might be used in a photo, right? Enjoying that like transition between the movement, and then how much can you enrich in that? Like, where is your sticky points? Where is...
And you just kind of nailed it, because there's this expression, in dance where it's like dance occurs in the transitions. So the choreography is in the transition.
Yeah.
Between the poses, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
No, you're dead on. It's the transition between the movements.
Yeah, and like
between the poses.
And it's also like, what are you rushing through? You're doing a side lunge, transition to another side lunge, and you're like rushing through this one spot on that transition, and you're like, why am I rushing through that piece? Is that the piece that's the most difficult? Like, am I just like using other things to fix it?
Or if I'm in a side lunge, what's the transition? What is happening on a mechanical level from me being in like a side lunge on my right leg, transitioning up and over to a side lunge on my left leg? I want to know what's happening in between.
Right, exactly. And can you also bring like imagery to it to like make it a more enriching experience, but like, yeah, finding a way to enrich that experience as opposed to just getting to the end goal position.
Right. But, this kind of makes me think of like something I think Rochelle touched on, and that whole idea, like she said she'd give choreography and then she'd change the music. So it's like, yeah, are you asking somebody to change the tempo?
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
And what, how does that affect what they're doing?
Yeah.
And that could be anything,
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other world, is rhythm and tempo, because we start at 23 days and our brain starts forming the vestibular system. So it's like you're already noticing your mom's pattern when she walks, like your rhythm is already setting. But like when
so funny. I have a very funny story about that.
Yeah.
Actually, this is one of those like crazy stories. Alec had a client when we lived in San Francisco. The guy was a war veteran. He was injured. He walked with a limp. One day he came in and he said, I have to bring my 8-year-old son in with me because I couldn't get childcare or something. So Alec said, okay. So he brought his son in, and Alec was watching the kid walk, and the kid was walking just like the dad.
Yes.
And it was one of those like, whoa, that is amazing.
Yes.
And then it's funny, as a side note, I've got a friend who's been digitizing these 8mm films for me. And so I'm looking at these old movies, and one of them was like me playing in the leaves. And I'm looking at this stuff, I'm like, oh my God, these patterns are there already. Yeah. It's like, and they didn't change until I had to start working on them when I was like all of a sudden in pain in my 20s.
Yeah, right. My grandpa had polio. So a lot of my mom's siblings have this specific gait to them that's very interesting. And it's like, it's just different.
It's wild, right?
It's like, because the legs were a little bowed. And
it's
so some of them have this
crazy.
little, waddle pattern. If they're listening, I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But yeah, it's really amazing how not only do our genetics shaped by our parents or our experiences, but rhythm can have such a big input. And then if you can take rhythm and place it into your transitions or your eccentrics, if we're going back to that, it's like, how can you help influence those movements in a more transformative way,
Or you can use, if say somebody's running on a treadmill or walking, it's like, can you hear the rhythm of your footfall? Do you hear what's going on? So let's see what's happening with that, It could be an indicator.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the...
Yeah, thank you for that. As far as, you also mentioned a little bit about working with individuals who do yoga or lots of yoga practitioners. And I wanted to point out that there was a moment when you had me in like a position where we were going to enter into downward dog, and you were like, transform that experience. This is supposed to be the most simple, yoga. Like, I'm excited to get into downward dog. And I was like, my goodness, this is so different.
What was different about it?
My pecs were not, like, it was more of a coming from the shoulder girdle, like, the like keeping the breastbone kind of beaming forward and keeping the back of the neck nice and long.
Yeah.
As if it was pressing against a wall behind it. So the whole experience of that simple movement was nice.
I mean, really nice. I don't know if it's like yoga appropriate, but certainly I was just trying to put, different function. And you know what?
It's your version of yoga, though.
I know. And, it just kind of like makes me think about the fact that, because I have this conversation with people when they come in, and it's like, listen, depending on what you do, it's not going to be it may not be functionally perfect, right? It's like, there are some things in dance that, I always say it's like, if dance were functionally perfect all the time, it would be so boring to watch. It's like you're watching people that are doing extraordinary things.
Yeah, or surprising things. Not just walking down the street like everybody else.
Right. And sometimes it's like, depending on, maybe there's a methodology and this is the way the methodology works. So maybe in yoga, that's what the goal is to be in this kind of extreme position. And that's not for me to say, but I can say this is potentially what's leading to the issue you may be experiencing. So it's like, if you're somebody who does a lot of down dog and you're having shoulder issues, well, let's take a look at the down dog. And this is where you may be running into trouble. Let's make it work for you.
Right.
I wouldn't want to tell somebody not to do something.
Yeah.
Especially if it brings them joy.
Right.
It's like, let's make it.
Yeah. My businesses love the evolution, so it's all about doing what brings you joy. But at the same time, you have to start balancing the body out to keep enjoying the things that you love.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
Like, yes, and especially if you're talking about pole or dance, you should be doing both sides. There are times where I'll take my basketball or whatever sports equipment and bring it to my left side. So you have to start to find the balance, or your body is just going to.
I love that.
Yeah.
Or even the balance of, like, I love the fact that you do something like basketball or weight training and pole. So you've got these fluid movements, and then you've got these more, hard, quick movements.
Yeah, elastic.
I love it.
I've been doing a lot of exploration with elastic movement and how that, just kind of brings the body back into this, I guess, buoyancy state, kind of just a little bit less heavy.
Yeah. But I like to, I like to work with this idea that you're trying to bring the body back to zero. So it's sort of like, I feel like, for me, I would love to have, I always think about, like, I would love to have I'd love to be as adaptable as I can to take on anything, right? So it's like, I want to be able to bring myself back to this zero place where I can then move from in any direction, whether it's fast, slow, modalities, because that's I don't want to lose physical confidence.
Right. I think that's what everyone's after, physical confidence.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, I've thought about this years ago. All of a sudden I was like, I don't want to age and be fearful, like physically fearful. I just don't want that. I'm going to put that off as long as I possibly can. So it's like, I want to be able to look at a movement or look at something and be like, I think I'm going to try that. That looks cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm 58. I can do that.
Nice.
But that's the goal. Like, I don't want to be in a position where all of a sudden it's like, I choked.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing was listening to my grandma one time. She had called me and I'm like, what happened? She had cut her leg up. I'm like, how did you cut your leg up? And she was like 83 at the time or something. And she was like, I was hopping back over the fence. And
awesome.
I was like,
yes, grandma, that's great.
She was like, I just can't do the things that I used to be able to do. And in my head, I love that for you, that you were still hopping the fence at 83.
Yeah.
It's just always a reminder in my mind to keep staying active for prolonged experiences. Because once movement is limited, so are your experiences.
Yeah.
So once you fear more, again, your experiences are limited. So it's
funny you say that too, because I've got people that come in here that are older, and if I've been working with them for long enough, and as I'm working with them while they're aging, I start to hear language come in, and it's very fearful. So every other sentence becomes like, I'm afraid that, and I'm afraid this, and stuff like that. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, that's not the body. What I see in front of me is a very capable body. It's a shame that they feel that way.
Right.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm trying to put you in environments that take the threat away.
Right.
But sometimes it's still there. But it's really interesting to hear that fear-based language come in.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to
This
work
is how
at
I'm learning from my elders. I'm learning
Yeah.
from people older than me, and it's like, this is what I'm looking at, what I want to do and what I don't want to do.
Right, right. I used to work at a senior center, and I used to teach people how to fall. And some would have issues because they were afraid of their vertigo getting to the ground and coming back up. So we'd do it against the wall as opposed to just rolling patterns on the ground. But, there's always like a way to lessen the threat so that people are still moving or ease them into the situation because.
And again, that even dovetails back to the whole idea of like giving somebody the tools to take agency. So giving them that understanding of what's happening, how things work.
Yeah.
So they've got little movement bites that they can do. I mean, depending on what throughout the day. So.
Or if they feel a nag in their shoulder or their hip or their foot, then they're like, oh, let me take this as information, not fear, just information. And now I can go, it's a signal to the body, like, I need to go move.
Right.
As opposed to, I'm getting older and crankier. No, I need to go move.
Right. That goes for any age. I mean, that's when we get people in here, we like, again, it kind of goes back to the educating them, but it's also like, we want somebody to leave with an understanding that if they experience this again, then this is most likely what it means. Mm-hmm. And here are some tools so you can try to self-correct. And then, if it gets to a point, then come back in, let's revisit. But I mean, really want people to be able to, understand what they're feeling and go, oh, maybe I need to do this, or I need to do X. And it's like, oh, that just solved it.
Yeah. I love that you said this idea of agency. And I think that I feel the same way with my clients. It's like, I want them to feel they can do a push-up. They can do a squat wherever. They don't need me to be around. And this idea that's more empowering as opposed to, again, fearful. Just, yes, I'm here to like help you for this session, but you also can take what we've done and do a little bit on your own
and let's make it digestible for you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the simplest thing to do, simplest task. Oftentimes, if the first session, it's like you're going to work on standing on both feet underneath your hips. Just start there.
Right.
Every time you're standing in line, coffee shop, subway, whatever, both feet underneath of you. Because you notice as people stand, they stand, they're kind of posting on one hip.
Right.
It's like, no, let's just put both feet underneath of you and see what happens.
Back to like simple like meditation practices,
Well,
just like, back to zero.
Yeah, in some ways. And they're like, really? That's it? That's all you want me to do? Yeah, for now, let's just work on that because it's probably hard enough.
Yeah.
Because it's just all about being aware.
Right. Yeah. And just bringing your attention inward. When I'm in this position, where does my body want to shift and where do I have to fight that and what muscles are now turning on to fight that or to...
Yeah. Or boy, I'm standing with both feet underneath me. This feels really foreign.
Yeah.
What am I feeling?
Right. Yeah, I've had so many feelings. But the different exercises that you've brought to me, I'm like, oh my gosh. One time we did the pelvis workshop and I did one exercise. I did one exercise with you and a hip internal and external rotation exercise where I was just laying on the ground on my stomach. And I went home and I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel my whole back of my right rib cage just like expanding and like in this whole different way, kind of seizing tiny, like just this awareness just from this rotation. And it was just one simple exercise. So it's just so much to
just precise and well directed.
Yeah, and just see and notice when you take the time to break it down. There was actually, I do want to touch on this really quickly, but there was one time where I had mentioned the word engage, or maybe I was saying I've noticed that my left like obliques or my left abs weren't turning on or engaging. And I think you were like, we don't always use that, or like activate. You were like, we don't always use that. Can you like talk about that a little bit? Do you mind?
No, I love that because people all the time are like, but so I have to engage my core.
Right.
No, because that could potentially set up a whole other wave of dysfunction.
Okay.
I had somebody in here earlier and she's like, so I need to engage my core to do that. And it was like, no, you don't need to engage your core to do everything because that to me implies that you are bracing.
Right.
So Yeah, we pretty much don't even use the word, and this isn't by choice, it just ends up happening with the teaching, but it's like, I don't reference abdominals in terms of like engage.
Yeah.
I don't do that at all. It's more, I'm going to teach you this movement. And your abdominals are involved in this movement, but they're not the driving force of this movement. That's why I'll say that, because oftentimes when people get into this whole headset of I need to engage my core, my first question is usually, well, what's your definition of core? Depending on, where they're coming from, it's not always accurate, in my opinion, but though I have to engage my core, and it's like, but sometimes when you do that, you're so fixated on engaging your core that that's all you do.
Right.
So it's like you've just completely like locked out your abdominals, and then but you're also asking for movement. So how does that make sense? You're going to brace and then ask for movement.
Right.
Whereas if you just kind of, let's break this movement down. If we kind of teach the movement, the abdominals are going to do what they got to do.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's why I don't really go for that. If you, again, and I'll say, depends on what you're doing. If you are a power lifter and you got a lot of weight on your back, yeah, you got to brace. But that's a whole different thing,
Right.
But it's all context specific.
Right. Yeah, and it's also just goes back to the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you're just working on engaging the core, then what else is happening around the core that you're not focused on?
Right. So you're freezing.
Right.
You're freezing the ability to move. And it's like, I mean, coming from Pilates certification 1990, I get it, because that's all I did. Right. It was like, oh, but I got to do this from the core. And it was like, no, there's more nuance than that.
Yeah.
And sometimes people need permission to not engage.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
It's like
to let go.
Let go.
Yeah.
Let go, because sometimes if you overly engage, you're disrupting. You're disrupting those transitions that need to occur. You're disrupting movement. You're not promoting movement.
You're not freeing up the space.
You're not freeing up the movement that you may be trying to free up.
Right. Yeah, because if you want to compress on one side, you have to allow the other side to open up. It's oftentimes just breathing through one side can help the other side to compress.
And depending on the context that you're set up in, you could be eccentrically going into a side bend, which means the side that you're compressing, like the opposite side is the one that's kind of controlling the motion.
Right.
Or you're doing like a side crunch, which is going to be a different story. Again, that is it eccentric? Is it concentric? Is it isometric?
Yeah.
So again, this is where it comes to like understanding what the movement is and what the players are and what's got to happen within that movement. Where's this movement starting from and where's it going? Oftentimes it's like, it's this idea of like distal. Are you moving distal to proximal? So like, am I moving from my hand and then bringing it into me, or am I moving proximal to distal? What's the demand?
Right. And I think for me personally, when you had me laying down on my stomach for that exercise with the internal and external rotation, it was also this like, I was just supposed to bring my hip towards your hand and to flatten your hand into the mat.
Right. So the transverse plane rotation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was, I feel very powerful, because it was just a target that my hip had to hit, as opposed to engage, right? Or activate your left abdominals, which
good luck with
like,
that.
Yeah, it was just like, this is your target.
Because also it's like muscles don't work, they're not going to work in isolation.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, I can really feel my like left internal oblique working. It's like, no.
Right. Well, I will say that there's that exercise. I am feeling this more than usual because I've had colitis in the past and Crohn's, and it was mainly affected in that area.
But are you feeling it more than usual because you are actively and consciously engaging it, or are you feeling it more than usual because you're performing a movement that's asking for it to work?
Yes, what I mean? I wasn't actively like being like, oh, brace this. It was more of the...
Well, and it's funny because that you bring that up too, because it's some of those movements of like a cobra, right?
Right.
Like in yoga, people are like, but I got to engage my core. It's like, but you're engaging your abdominals and which is going to take you toward flexion here, but you're trying to take your body into extension.
Right.
So like just take that out of the equation right now and let's see where that goes. I mean, we spend a fair amount of time kind of like changing the language on people with that, where they're like, yeah, I gotta, but I engage my core. I've gotten to points where I'm like, explain to me what that means. What does that mean to you? Well, I gotta engage my glutes and my hamstrings. Glutes and hamstrings are not part of your core. They're not. They're movers. They're not stabilizers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, that's my soapbox on the core.
No, I love hearing it too, because it's interesting for me as a trainer in a group setting or a personal setting where, you've heard these phrases, you've said these phrases, right? You use them often because you're like, oh, I just need them to not butt wink or whatever. Right. So you're trying to, again, get them to the place that you want them as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So you're using whatever phrases you think will hit for them, but then to revisit them and think about how you can ask for them in a different way. I find there's this one trainer, his name is DJ. He's a very experimental trainer, very unconventional. He lifts huge boulders and rocks, and he was doing something that's kind of hands-on training, just showing that if you just kind of bear hug someone from the back, that you can get them to do this deadlift in a different way. Just
nice.
Different things where you're giving manual feedback with your hands to provide an environment to allow the person to just get to the place faster, to understand that place faster.
I've got a personal trainer. I've got a coach. I love this guy. His name is Gabe. I've been working with him for a long time. And I use this as some people are having trouble squatting. And I don't teach any kind of barbell lifting or anything like that, but a basic squat. And when I was squatting with him, he put his hand on my back, right between my shoulder blades, roughly where the bar would be, in a back squat. And he pressed down, and all he said was just push diagonally up and back into my hand. And it was like, boom. It was oh, okay. And I use it on people in here.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, it was tremendously effective.
Yeah. Just having that manual feedback can be, but it's also hard, like you said earlier, with individuals who are not comfortable with being touched. Again, you have to find different ways around that. Yeah, so we've been chatting for a little bit now.
I know, and I got somebody coming in a minute.
Yeah, so let's finish up with one final message if you have, or is there anything else you wanted to chat about?
I could talk about this stuff forever, but I got to go to work and you got to go to work. One final message. You'd asked me about that. My biggest thing, and this is kind of across the board, I think would be curious and think critically. Always be curious about what you're seeing. Think critically about what it is and what it means, and whether you're, just on your own, or if you're a practitioner, a movement practitioner, understand what you're looking at. So be curious about what you're seeing, understand what it means, and then you can start to think about how you want to address it.
Right.
If you're looking to change it, or if you're looking to enhance it in any way.
Or table it.
Yeah. Come back to it another time. It's low priority.
Yeah.
Curiosity, critical thinking, find good resources, find good teachers.
In-person experiences.
In-person experiences, for sure.
Yeah. You need to see the body in the 3D.
You got to see the body in 3D, and it's sort of like these little bites of YouTube videos and stuff like that. They're great for kind of broad brush, but you got to really understand the nuance of some of the things you're seeing.
Yeah, the pelvis rotating side to side, the rib cage, the rib dance you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, or just, again, understand it. Understanding is key.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking and chatting
great.
And sharing all of your information.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this. This is really fun. My first podcast.
Yeah. All right, so we'll include all of our information in the link. And come in New York City. Check out Deb's space with her husband Alec. Also, there's workshops that are available, so you can contact her through her email. That will also be included in the information.
Fabulous. And there's no website.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no website.
We have zero online presence, and we don't even have our name on the door.
Well, you just have to come here and experience it for yourself.
I know, we're pretty under the radar that way.
Yeah. Well, I called you the movement witch. You just had the good spells that in like one exercise were able to
That's sweet.
bring me out of pain.
That's funny.
But yeah, so come check them out and take care.
Thanks, Teresa.
Enjoy. Bye.